And now, it's RFL Emmy Award-winning Richard French Live.
Welcome back, everybody. Continue our coverage of the uprising in Egypt now. We just heard from our guest, and I want to bring in our next guest, Kramer, a professor of Middle East politics, on the background of the uprising. And Karen, you know, people see this playing out, obviously, as they believe a world away. But let's try and make this relatable, not just to the immediate concerns in the Middle East, and not even to how much somebody's price per gallon could be going up when they fill up their tank, but moreover, the developing Middle East and what's going on in the Arab Street right now in Cairo could mean for the surrounding area. It's a fluid situation, but how nervous should this White House be?
Nervous. Okay, we really, these things are playing out as we speak, and the truth of it is that we are really observers at this point. We don't know how this is going to play out. There's many different scenarios. What's clear is that, you know, to use the cliche, a kind of a wall of fear has been broken through. And the announcement that, you know, the most recent announcement that the military in Egypt is saying that they are not going to fire on peaceful demonstrators is critical. I mean, that's traditionally, that's how these regimes have stayed in power. At the end of the day, they have loyal, effective security apparatus that is prepared to defend the regime. Once that goes, you're in, you know, uncharted territories, and it becomes very critical.
Be cynical with me, though, Karen. When the military chose, even with the appointment of head of the security agency to basically be the #2 behind Mubarak for success, when they decided to say, hey, listen, we'll be on the ground, but we're not going to raise a rifle, play their end game out from the military's perspective. Are they just waiting for Mubarak to be removed, and then they're going to assume power? They're not going to be taking orders from the Muslim Brotherhood or from, you know, from the young factions on the street. So how does this play out?
No, they're not going to be. The real answer is we're not sure. But I think that you also have to distinguish between the top echelons of the military and the rank and file. It's one thing for the top echelons to say, we want to support the regime, and traditionally they have supported the regime. They've been rewarded financially quite substantially for their support for the regime, and the regime knows how to take care of those whom it needs. And the security apparatus has always been a vital constituency for these regimes. That said, to have the rank and file mow down unarmed civilians, that's a lot of stress for any military, and there comes a certain point, particularly once you go through your non-lethal ammunition and you're talking about killing large numbers of people, you know, even if a certain top layer might be willing to do that, the uncertainty of whether or not your rank and file will carry out those orders has to be a factor in how they're trying to play this. And I think that there is a great deal of uncertainty about that. The military would lose a tremendous amount of respect, which it does have in Egypt, were it to do that. And I think it knows that. So I think that to some extent, all sides are watching to see how this plays out. Will the protesters have the staying power?
And moreover, where is the message? Where is the coherent message? See al-Baradei getting over there, and that he's filling a de facto void in terms of at least, I mean, long term, he's not the voice or the answer. So if the U.S. is obviously going to look out in self-interest, what is their greatest hope here? That Mubarak sees the writing on the wall, agrees that there'll be some, he'll do a step aside in 30, 60, 90 days, and there'll be free elections? I mean, at this point we're observers, but what's our hope?
The hope is exactly as you say, that this regime can somehow be eased out peacefully with minimal amount of bloodshed, and that there can be some kind of orderly, gradual transition, an inclusive one that would include all of the major parties. And of course that's going to mean bringing in the Muslim Brotherhood, which the U.S. has deep misgivings about. The Brotherhood has been very careful in this confrontation. They have not wanted to step out in front. They are aware how they're perceived internationally.
But they're also shrewd enough to see that there's going to be a big void, and they could be the most positioned politically to fill it. Now, let's talk, while I have some time, about some of the other concerns. Obviously, Israel right now. Egypt, one of the only nations to recognize Israel as a state. Who knows how this all shakes out? But speak about the concerns and the wild card that is Israel out of this whole equation. And if they see an unstable Egypt, how that's going to change the dynamics as well.
I think that's a huge concern for the U.S. right now. I mean, the Arab-Israeli conflict is central to U.S. concerns. The U.S. administrations have all been committed to Israel's security. Egypt has been a linchpin of this kind of more moderate Arab stance toward the whole conflict. The hope is that whatever regime, and this is assuming that Mubarak goes down, I mean, we don't know, but the hope is that whatever takes its place, if something does take its place, will be consistent on that front. I'm sure the United States will try to provide as many incentives as it can. You know, the Brotherhood is not as amenable to this as some of the other groups. This is a great concern. There's also another policy concern that the United States has. And this, I think, explains some of the hesitation of the United States. And the United States has been criticized about not coming out in front and saying, well, we're for the protesters. The United States has a dilemma. Yes, traditionally we always are, you know, ostensibly in support of democratic forces worldwide. We also have many allies in the Arab world who are authoritarian.
Yep.
And we don't want to give the message of, well, we'll throw the towel in on this guy, because that could be disabling for other allies that we feel work with us in strategic areas, be it cooperating against international terror groups or other forms of strategic cooperation, affording us military bases and other kinds of strategic assets. We don't want to be seen as tipping the balance against other allies that are also, I mean, there's unrest in Jordan, there's unrest in Yemen.
I'm sure the Saudis are looking very closely as to what's happening here.
So,
Karen, they've already told me I'm over, but I want to ask one last question to you. From every vantage point, it seems that there's more downside here than where we were maybe a month ago. But is there a possibility, albeit a Pollyannish one, that says, hey, this has been a largely secular uprising. Democracy has been at least the most voiced concern that these people want. They don't want oppression, they want freedom, they want opportunity in a younger generation. That kind of a message, if it permeated the Middle East here, could be the best thing for the Western world that we could ever hope for.
Absolutely. I mean, there is that possibility, and that's something that so many of us, longtime observers of the region, are hoping for. The fact that this is a region and people that have lived under quite brutal authoritarian regimes, and they deserve better. There's that piece of it. There's also the piece, as you say, the long-standing sense that the only viable opposition in the Arab world was Islamist, and that made the Western world shy away from really pushing hard on the political reform front. This message now that, you know what, there are other voices that are also pushing for political reform, and they're not necessarily the ones that frighten the West. In fact, there are these young bloggers and Facebook, this whole you know, April 6th generation that is not seeking a is not pushing an Islamist message. I think that was a real eye opener for many of us.
Well, who knows how this plays out? But Karen, I really appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.